I got 5 minutes, good man. Excellent. But to me, it's like when we speak about this new era, it's very related to sports because when we speak of this new era, it's not about Obama. To me, Obama is an expression of this new era, and it didn't even start in the November election season. I see it very much rooted in starting with Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans in 2005. I think that was the moment when this country really woke up from its fever dream of saying, well, Bush may be terrible, things may be awful, we may have the Patriot Act and all of this, but at least we're safe in some way. And then you saw how little the government actually cared. I mean, you have New Orleans absolutely devastated, and it's still devastated from what occurred. And what it took, which is so interesting for this panel's purposes, is it really took, I think, when Kanye West said, George Bush doesn't care about black people. There was something about it being Kanye West, about it being a hip-hop artist. Not because of who Kanye West was, but because of the place that hip-hop holds in our society. And it had an electric effect where it's not like we needed Kanye West to tell us that George Bush didn't care about black people, but it was the sort of thing where it was a collective, yes, that's right. I'm so glad someone is saying it. And then you had a ream of athletes come out, like Eton Thomas, player for the Washington Wizards. He said, Kanye West is right. If this had been a lily white neighborhood that was in the suburbs, there's no way George Bush would have let these people die. Charles Barkley said, this is about race, but it's also about economics. This country doesn't care about poor people either. And my favorite was an athlete who said, why do they care so much about steroids when New Orleans is underwater? That was Barry Bonds. And what you had was a very interesting contrast where you have like young people of color who have this amazing cultural capital saying their piece, and the contrast was George W. Bush in a plane saying, I can't wait for the day when we get to rebuild Trent Lott's house. If you remember that. And of course, Brownie, you're doing a heck of a job. I mean, it was very intense. And you saw a sea change in consciousness at that time. And I think this is what really laid the groundwork for everything we're talking about today. People may remember a poll after Hurricane Katrina that had George Bush's support in the African-American community. Do you remember this poll? It was 2%. 2%. And the margin of error on the poll was 5%. Which, if you think about it, I just have this image of like an elderly African-American on their deathbed writing a note saying, don't forget I hate George Bush. It being below zero. And then it started to reflect itself in other ways. A whole series of athletes, for the first time in a generation, started to say things about the war. People like Steve Nash, Adelius Thomas, who's a football player, Jeff Monson, who's an ultimate fighter, sort of people call that like cockfighting with humans. And Jeff Monson was out there saying stuff. I mean, it even entered the world of NASCAR, where like Dale Earnhardt Jr. was asked by Fox News, and he said, hey Dale, what are you doing after the big race? And he said, well, I'm gonna get all the pit crew, we're gonna go back to my house, we're gonna watch Fahrenheit 9/11. And the Fox News guy literally looked like he wet himself. He was like, what? Are you sure you didn't mean the new Rambo flick? And live on Fox, Dale Earnhardt Jr. said, no, I think it's a film that every person in this country has an obligation to see. And this is the terrain in which we're on. And you see this, what I'm trying to show is like you can, by looking at culture, it makes the argument for us in so many ways that this is a new era and that there is an opportunity to build a new left, because this doesn't happen in, say, 1995 or 1985. It happened in 2005 for a reason, and Barack Obama was elected in 2008 for a reason. We have a real opportunity right now. I mean, there is somebody in the White House who has actually said the words transgendered. There's somebody in the White House who actually knows who Edward Said is and read his work. We have somebody in the White House who is photographed asleep on Air Force One with a book about Pakistan on, first of all, a president knows how to pronounce Pakistan, but a president who had a book laid out as he was sleeping on his chest, and it was a book about Pakistan, and it was by Tariq Ali. So somebody who's reading Tariq Ali. Of course, we also have a president who's been terrible on LGBT rights up to this point. We have a president who, even if he's read Edward Said, you don't see it in terms of what he's saying about the people in Gaza living in hell. And we also have a president who ordered the death just yesterday of 15 people in Pakistan, the very people who he was reading about. And you know what? Dropping bombs on people, not the best way to fight for peace. And I keep thinking of the words, and I end on this note, of Naomi Klein, who I saw speak recently, the author of Shock Doctrine, brilliant book. And she said, the best thing about Barack Obama is the worst thing about Barack Obama, and it's that he can be pressured. And you think about that, and he is under, without question, pressure from banking interests, from capital interests, from military interests. And if our side doesn't take seriously the idea that we need to grab his ear too, and not support the president, but fight for him to do the right thing, then we're not going to build on the ground the new left we so desperately need. Because I think Howard Zinn said it perfectly when he said, it's not who's sitting in the White House, it's who's sitting in. We need to be sitting in, we need to be marching, and we need to be so loud that our voices drown out all of the other people who are trying to pull this country down the road to hell. So thank you very much.